Welcome to PK Woodworking, possibly the smartest YouTube channel out of this shop. And today we're going to talk about my Laguna TSS table saw, circa 2006. I got this about the time that my kids were born, a little bit after that, I guess. And it's a sliding table saw, and that's why I wanted to review it today, because there isn't a lot on the YouTube about the benefits or why someone would buy a sliding table saw. Because this particular saw acts like a normal table saw with that shoe removed from it that I'm going to show you what that does in a second. But this part of the saw is a traditional American like table saw. Works the same way. I have a Wixley gauge on it so that I can rip all the way to 55 inches or whatever on this particular saw. But then this side does different things. So this has a slider on it, and the slider allows you to push the slide all the way through. And if I open my garage, I can go back the other direction also. So why would you want that? I'll get to in a second, but let me tell you a little bit more about the saw. So I own a Laguna bandsaw, and I only found out about this saw because I had a Laguna bandsaw and I saw this sliding table saw on their website. I've had traditional table saws in the past, your Unisaw copies, etc. And they worked great, and I made a lot of great things with those. But when I found out what this offers and what's different about this, it made sense for me to purchase it. I also wanted to upgrade just because of the saw that I had didn't have the power I wanted, etc. So this saw is about 1,000 pounds all in with the slider attached and with the different blade. I'm sorry, the different motor. This comes normally with a 3 horsepower from Laguna back in the day, but you could order it with a 5 horsepower Baldor motor. So I did get that. And then also this saw comes with a scoring motor also. So it has a separate blade in the front and a separate 12-inch blade in the back for the actual table saw part of it, the regular part of the saw. As a scoring saw, you can manually move this blade up and down and adjust it with shims back and forth very manually so that it spins in reverse of the blade, the main blade. And when you're bringing items that have thin veneers on them, they don't chip out. They look perfect regardless of actually how sharp the back blade is or whatever it is. So a separate 1 horsepower motor powers that. And then there's a 5 horsepower Baldor motor that powers the main saw blade. And very easy to change the saw blade in either direction. It moves completely past the saw blade, and we'll show you some close, tight shots to show you. But there's actually a small, I guess, I don't know, compartment inside that blocks the blade and tries to attempt to get all of the sawdust away from it also. So along with that, if you're going to go back to what you call the main part of the table saw, the saw came with a very basic, it's a European saw, so it comes with a splitter in the back that raises and lowers with the saw blade. So you can see it, you can get quite a depth of cut with a 12-inch blade. But it came with a regular, like every other table saw has, vacuum port for dust collection on the top of the saw, which wasn't really great. I made a couple of different changes during the course of the time that I've owned it. And now I have a shark guard on it, which I think is the best thing that I've ever put on it. And I've created a kind of a dust collection arm that comes over the top. And this is really great at sucking pretty much all the dust that comes off the top of the blade. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. What does this give you though out here that makes it so cool to own? Well, 2 things. The first thing is that these tables right here, this is my well-loved table that's out here that needs a little bit of paint on it, but this table supports a lot of weight. Like, this is a very strong outrigger. You can stand on it and nothing happens. So you can support 4x8 sheets of wood on this in the, I guess, the orientation of 8 feet in this direction and 4 feet in this direction, which lets you put a cross-cut fence like one of these two. I'm going to pick this one up and kind of give you an idea what it does. This sits in this area and uses this particular table part of it to register it at 0 degrees, and then you can pick 4 other degree marks after that that'll automatically index, and you can move this to cut angles if you want. But in this direction like this, I can put this on here with this particular stop, move to wherever I want, and it's all got a measurement on the top of this. And then you can use this clamping mechanism that clamps the piece of wood like that, like so, and then you can push a 4x8 sheet of wood through here and cut it super easily without having to resort to craziness from a crosscut perspective. So this saw came with, as stock, this particular short fence that has an adjustment on the side, and this one's actually made out of steel, the other one's made out of aluminum, but this one fits like this, and then it has actually an adjustable body that pulls out that can give you a longer width cut. That's what came with it as stock, and then this was an option to buy on top of it so that you could get the repeatable width of, you know, what angles you'd want to pick. So now what's the shoe for? The shoe is so that you can straight line wood. In this particular version, I didn't know this at the time. I thought this was how long a sliding table saw came. I thought, oh, this is so cool. It's like a 55-inch long, give or take, slider, and you can straight line pieces of wood. So what you can do is you have a rough-sided piece of lumber. You can jam it into that piece right there in either of these 2 slots, and then you can get it up next to the blade and run it through and create a straight edge on it, much the way you could do on a joiner. Little did I know that this was a much smaller version of a real sliding table saw, which most of them are much larger for bigger shops. Most of them come in 9-foot, 10-foot, or 12-foot long tables like this, and the sliders like this, and so it makes a lot more sense to straight line a piece like that. So when you don't need this, which is 99% of the time, you just loosen it, it comes off, and now you can use it like a regular table saw, or you can use it, like I said before, with this other cool feature of the slider on the front. This saw is a double trunnion saw, and it's got this particular feature out here to adjust the actual angle of the blade, and it comes right back to 0 very easily. And in the front, this is how you change the actual height of the blade from the front. And all of the levers on this saw that adjust pretty much everything are called kip levers, and they have a little push button, and they allow you to change the, you know, how you would adjust it, tighten it, loosen it. So really kind of neat for me compared to what I'd owned before. Little did I know there was such cool things out there besides that now, but now I do, and there are really cool stuff out there that exists now. So I'm going to start it, give you an idea what it sounds like when it's on without the dust collection on. Hold just a second. And that's what it sounds like with the scoring blade turned on. With the scoring blade off. And now the main blade off. Now, like I said before, we'll show you on this side, but the way that this particular fence is, this is just like a Beismeyer fence. It's identical to one of those. Has a really neat, clear plastic that's easy to adjust, that can show you all the way. Like I said, I think this one lets me go all the way out to like 58 or 60 inch rip width, which is crazy. I don't know why you'd need that, but it came like that. And then I added on a Wixley digital readout to the bottom so that I can zero it out, or I can get like a much more accurate view of what that looks like as my eyes get older. So that's the initial idea of what this is. Let me give you some thoughts about this saw in general. This saw has been truly bulletproof. It has never let me down. It has never stopped working. It has never run out of power. This saw really is an amazing workhorse. And if you find one somewhere and you just have a regular saw, they don't go super expensive now, so it's a really probably a good one of those good finds, budget finds for somebody who has a small shop. I mean, because you can find long sliders that are possibly 3-phase machines. This is a single-phase machine, but there are 3-phase machines that are gigantic, so they won't really work very well in a small workshop. But this particular one, good footprint, added use, but it works great like your typical table saw does too. Some other things about it: the table completely flat, stayed flat, works great. This particular table out here is not your traditional piece of wood. This is a steel piece of reinforced steel, because it's got ribbing underneath it that are really thick, and you can stand on this. That's how strong it is, and works like a champ. So would I recommend this to somebody? First of all, I think it's a great saw. I thought it was amazing back in the day when I bought it. I'd say now it's a really, really top-notch saw for what you can find it on the used market, because they don't sell this saw like this anymore. At least Laguna doesn't, and no one else that I know of sells a saw like this with a shorter stroke slider like this. And the reason why I wanted to do a review of this and really talk about this was because I've got plans for something different. So I did want to just basically have it on record about what this saw is, because really no one ever reviewed it. So I wanted to kind of go after that. Okay, dimensions. So the slider itself is 50 inches long. So that's what gives you the ability to cut a 48-inch wide piece, because you can pull it all the way past the blade and go all the way through. From an actual overall piece of cast iron, the cast iron itself is 31.5 by 21.5. Some things to note: this the idea of this is the blade is right next to the slider, and you can make 0 inserts for this that show this, but the idea is whenever you have a slider like this, you want it right next to the blade. There are a couple of other brands out there that make sliders that add on after the piece of cast iron on this side, which makes it much less usable, in my opinion, and pretty much everybody else who buys it and then returns them. The ultimate height of cut that you can get on this particular saw with a 12-inch blade is 3 3/4 inches. So pretty deep cut with a 12-inch blade on it. And it does come and was available with a mobility kit, and as my son Chris can attest to, it works pretty slick. You can probably see on the bottom later, there's some wheels that pop into position, and then this little bracket down here at the bottom, you have an arm and it pulls it out of the way. And we've moved it from the little one-car garage we had to now my workshop I'm in right now. The reason why this table outfeed right here is so beat up is really because I didn't have a choice back then in the other shop but to use this back side of the saw with an outfeed table that I built for it as kind of my place to work on. So it took too much beating. But again, very easy to paint and fix, because they come right off with kip levers and come right back on, right to where you had them before, and very easy to keep them aligned to the top of the surface so that it's level, no drama. So I just wanted to say thanks again for watching these videos, because it's kind of cool to see some of the responses that you give. If you got any questions about this Laguna, please feel free to ask. They've been around, like I said, for 15 years. I think they sold it for about 5 years, give or take. And yeah, if you got any questions, let me know.